Story 1. The young couple, Ashley and Michael, were excited to be spending their first night in a national park. They had been hiking all day and they were tired, but they were also eager to see what the night would bring. They set up their tent in a clearing. They sat around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. As the sun set, the forest around them grew dark and silent. Suddenly they heard a noise in the bushes. They both froze, listening. The noise came again, closer this time. It sounded like something big was moving through the undergrowth. Ashley and Michael looked at each other, their eyes wide with fear. They both knew what they were thinking. A Sasquatch. The noise came again, even closer now. They could hear something breathing. They were both too scared to move. Suddenly, a large figure stepped out of the bushes. It was a Sasquatch, all right. It was tall and hairy, with long arms and legs. It stared at Ashley and Michael with big, bulging, dark eyes. Ashley and Michael screamed and ran for their tent. The Sasquatch chased after them, but they managed to make it inside and zip up the door. They huddled together in the tent, listening to the Sasquatch roar and pound at the canvas. They didn't know what to do. They were trapped. After a while, the noises stopped. Ashley and Michael waited a few more minutes just to be sure, until they unzipped the tent door. The Sasquatch was gone. They didn't know where it had gone, but they were both glad to see it go. They quickly packed up their things and left the campsite. They never went back to that national park again. Ashley and Michael never forgot what they had seen that night. They knew that the Sasquatch was real, but they were both too afraid to ever go back to that place. Story 2. The sun was setting as the two hikers made their way through the forest. They had been hiking for hours, and they were starting to get tired, but they were determined to reach the summit of the mountain before nightfall. Suddenly they heard a noise. It was loud and guttural. It was a loud and guttural roar that seemed to come from all around them. They froze their hearts, and their hearts were pounding in their chest. "What was that?" one of them whispered. "I don't know," the other said. But I don't like it. They listened for a moment, but they didn't hear anything else. Slowly they started to move again, but they were both on edge. A few minutes later, they came to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a large tree, and standing next to the tree was a creature. It was big, at least 8 feet tall. It was covered in dark fur and had long, sharp claws. Its eyes were yellow, and they glowed in the darkness. The hikers stared at the creature in horror. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. The creature roared again, and this time it took a step towards them. The hikers turned and ran. They ran as fast as they could, but the creature was faster. It was gaining on them. They could hear the creature's footsteps getting closer and closer. They knew they couldn't outrun it. Suddenly they came to a cliff. They looked down and saw the rocks far below. They had no choice. They had to jump. They took a deep breath and leaped off the cliff. They fell for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, they landed on the rocks below. They were bruised and shaken, but they were alive. They looked up and saw the creature standing on the edge of the cliff. It roared at them one last time, and then it turned and ran away. The hikers sat on the rocks, too scared to move. They didn't know what had just happened, but they knew that they had just survived a close encounter with the creature known as Bigfoot. Story 3. It was a dark and stormy night. The rain was coming down in sheets, and the wind was howling like a banshee. 2 young women, Sarah and Emily, were hiking in Yellowstone National Park. They had been hiking for hours, and they were starting to get worried. They had been following a trail, but it had disappeared in the storm. "I think we're lost," Sarah said. "I know," Emily said. "I'm scared." They huddled together under a tree, trying to stay dry. They could hear the sound of the wind in the trees, and they imagined all sorts of things lurking in the wilderness. Suddenly they heard a noise. It was loud. It was a loud and guttural roar that seemed to come from all around them. They froze, their hearts pounding in their chest. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. "I don't know," Emily said, "but I don't like it." They listened for a moment, but they didn't hear anything else. Slowly, they started to move again, but they were both on edge. They walked for a few minutes, but they didn't seem to be getting anywhere. They were starting to lose hope. "I think we should stay here," Sarah said. "We're not going to find our way in this storm." "But what if something comes for us?" Emily asked. "Well, we'll just have to face it together," Sarah said. They sat down under the tree and waited. They didn't have to wait long. A few minutes later, they saw a figure coming towards them. It was big, and it was covered in dark fur. "It's a Bigfoot!" Sarah screamed. The creature roared and charged at them. Sarah and Emily screamed and ran. They ran as fast as they could, but the creature was faster. It caught up to them and grabbed Sarah. Emily watched in horror as the creature carried her off into the darkness. Emily ran as fast as she could, but she knew she couldn't outrun the creature. She had to find a place to hide. She saw a cave up ahead, and she ran towards it. She ducked inside, just as the creature came into view. The creature sniffed in the air and looked around, but it didn't see Emily. It roared in frustration, and then turned and ran away. Emily sat in the cave, shaking and crying. She witnessed something that she would never forget. She had seen a Bigfoot, and it had taken her friend. She didn't know what to do. She was all alone in the wilderness, and she didn't know how to get home. She sat in the cave for a long time, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, she decided that she had to try to find her way back to the trail. She took a deep breath and stepped out of the cave. The rain had stopped, but the forest was still dark and silent. Emily started walking, hoping she would find her way back to the trail. She walked for hours, but she didn't see anything familiar. She was starting to lose hope when she saw a light in the distance. She ran towards the light, and soon she came to a ranger station. The rangers were surprised to see her, but they were happy to help her. They gave her food and water and called her parents. Emily's parents were relieved to see her. They had been worried sick about her. Emily told them what had happened, but they didn't believe her at first. But then they saw the news of what happened to about how her friend was lost in Yellowstone. Emily knew that she would never forget her encounter with the Bigfoot. It was a terrifying experience, but she was glad that she had managed to survive that night. Story 4. The forest was dark and silent. The only sound was the wind through the trees. A group of hikers were making their way through the woods, laughing and talking. They were on a camping trip. They were excited to spend a few days in the wilderness. The group consisted of 4 friends: Anna, Ben, Chris, and Alma. They had been friends since high school, and they were experienced hikers. They had been planning this camping trip for months, and they were looking forward to it. They had been hiking for a few hours when they came to a clearing. The clearing was surrounded by tall trees, and there was a small stream running through the middle of it. The hikers decided to stop for a break. They sat down on the ground and started to eat lunch. As they were eating, they heard a strange noise coming from the trees. It sounded like something was moving around. "Did you hear that?" Anna said. The other hikers stopped eating and listened. They could hear the noise, too. It sounded like something big was moving through the underbrush. "What is it?" Ben asked. "I don't know," Anna said, "but it doesn't sound good." The hikers slowly got up from the ground. The noise got louder. The hikers could hear something was crushing through the underbrush. Suddenly, a large creature burst out of the trees. It was tall and hairy, with long arms and legs. The hikers screamed and ran. The creature chased after them, its roars echoing through the forest. The hikers ran as fast as they could, but the creature was gaining on them. Anna tripped and fell. Ben stopped to help her up, and the creature caught up to them. The creature raised its arm to strike, but Ben was able to throw his backpack at it. The backpack hit the creature in the face, and it staggered back. The hikers took the advantage in the creature's confusion and ran. They ran as fast as they could, and the creature chased after them. The hikers ran through the forest, their lungs burning. They could hear the creature close behind them. They knew that they couldn't outrun it, but they had to keep trying. Finally, the hikers reached the edge of the forest. They ran out into the open field, and the creature stopped chasing them. The hikers collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. They had escaped the creature, but they knew that it was still out there. They never went back into that forest. The next day, the hikers went back to the clearing where they had seen the creature. They searched the area, but they couldn't find any trace of it. They didn't know if the creature was real or if they had imagined it, but one thing was for sure. They'll never forget that day that they saw a Bigfoot. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed it.